the first crack appeared the day my father left. Not a dramatic explosion like in the movies, but a quiet, insidious fracture that splintered my life into jagged, uneven pieces. I was 14, and Chloe became a before and after story. Before, there were two parents, a semblance of normalcy, and a dull, comfortable routine. After, there was a gaping hole, a mother desperate to fill it, and a new player who smelled of expensive cologne and cold judgment, Damien. Damien? Even the name tasted bitter on my tongue. He was polished, successful, a partner at some soulless law firm, and he made my mother, Evelyn, laugh. That's what she told herself anyway, that his presence somehow validated her, made her whole again. But the way he looked at me, that was different. It wasn't the unsettling leers you hear about that made me sick to my stomach. Worse, as if I were an obstacle, a loose end he needed to neatly tie off. Your daughter could use some discipline, Evelyn. I overheard him say one evening, barely a month after he'd moved his Italian leather shoes into our hallway. I was lurking just outside the living room, ostensibly heading to the kitchen, but really just trying to gauge the atmosphere. She's at that difficult age. You know, Mom replied, her voice laced with that sickeningly sweet tone she reserved for Damien. My stomach twisted. Difficult? Was that what I was now? A problem to be managed, a phase to be endured? I know, darling. That's why I'm here, to help, Damien said, his voice dropping into a low, soothing rumble. Help. It was a viper disguised as an angel. His help started small. Little jabs about my clothes, the way I styled my hair, the music I listened to. That top is a bit loud, isn't it, Chloe? Don't you want to present a more refined image? Each comment was a tiny pinprick, slowly deflating my already fragile sense of self. Then came the jeans. 6 months after Damien had wormed his way into our lives, during dinner, the fluorescent kitchen light making the air thick and heavy. I had bought new jeans, using my allowance, relieved to finally have something that fit well. Those jeans are getting a bit tight on you, aren't they, Chloe? Damien remarked, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. You're growing so fast. He lowered his voice, but it was loud enough to reach my ears, wider, mainly. The blood rushed to my face. Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the linoleum floor. They're supposed to fit like this, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. Oh, honey. Mom jumped in, her eyes darting between Damien and me. Damien's just concerned about your health. You know how teenagers can sometimes not notice these things. The pattern was set. Damien would deliver the barbed comment, disguised as concern, and Mom would dutifully back him up, smoothing it over with insincere platitudes. When I tried to confide in her later, to explain how his words chipped away at my soul, she'd dismiss me with a wave of her hand. You're being too sensitive, Chloe. You need to learn to take a joke. Damien, ever the attentive audience, would sit there with that smug, knowing smile that never quite reached his eyes. I'm just trying to look out for you, Chloe. I started calling Dad more often. Our Skype calls became my lifeline, a virtual rope connecting me to a world where I wasn't constantly being judged. He listened, really listened, without trying to minimize Damien's behavior or tell me I was overreacting. He still sent alimony payments, more generous than the court had mandated, I later learned. But money couldn't fix the slow rot eating away at my insides. Everything changed when my half-brother Leo was born. I was 17, trying to navigate the minefield that was my final year of high school, while our house transformed into a shrine to Damien's perfect little family. Mom was completely consumed by Leo, and I understood. He was tiny, helpless, utterly dependent. But it was like I'd become invisible, erased from the family portrait overnight. The only time anyone seemed to notice me was when I messed up, like when I accidentally slammed my bedroom door too loudly and woke Leo from his nap. Damien's wrath was swift and unforgiving. I braced myself, expecting Damien to become even more unbearable after Leo's arrival, to find new and inventive ways to criticize me. But something unexpected happened. Damien started traveling for work a lot. Business trips to New York, London, Tokyo. Those trips became my salvation. The house felt lighter, airier when he was gone. I could breathe again. Even Mom seemed more relaxed, though she was always counting down the days until his return, her face softening with a longing I couldn't understand. With Damien gone so much, my senior year actually turned out better than I'd expected. I poured myself into my studies, joined the yearbook committee, and started making plans for college. Real plans, not just daydreams about escape. Graduation day arrived, a swirl of heat, proud parents, and nervous anticipation. Dad kept his promise and showed up, sitting in the audience, beaming with pride as I walked across the stage to receive my diploma. Mom was there too, of course, with Leo and Damien. But it was Dad's face I searched for in the crowd, his approval that I craved. After the ceremony, Dad pulled me aside, his eyes filled with pride. "I meant what I said before, Chloe. Any college you want, I'll make it happen. You've earned it." I'd already sent out applications to several colleges, hoping at least one would offer me a place. To my surprise, they all did. But I knew exactly which one I wanted: Marshall University, in Dad's city. Far enough away that I wouldn't have to come home often, but close enough to someone who actually cared. I waited until dinner to break the news to Mom and Damien. We were sitting around the table, Mom feeding Leo while Damien complained about airline food from his latest trip. "I got accepted to all the colleges I applied to," I announced, seizing a rare moment of silence. "I'm going to accept the offer from Marshall University." Mom paused, the baby spoon hovering midair. That's where your father lives, isn't it?" I nodded, bracing myself for their reaction. Well, Damien drawled, that familiar mocking smile spreading across his face. "Looks like your father finally managed to do something useful with his life, paying for college. Who would have thought?" My fingers tightened around my fork, my knuckles turning white. The urge to lash out, to tell him exactly what I thought of his useful contribution to my life, was almost overwhelming. But I held my tongue. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Mom let out a small sigh, a sound that bordered on relief. Maybe she was glad to finally have me out of the way, free to focus on her real family, without the constant reminder of her previous marriage hanging around. The next morning, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Mom was too preoccupied with Leo to notice me hauling my bags downstairs, and Damien had already left for work. Dad had arranged for a car service to pick me up. By that evening, I was standing in front of Dad's house, a beautiful 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch. It was so different from the cramped, suffocating house I'd left behind. But it wasn't just the size that struck me, it was the warmth, the feeling of belonging. Sarah, Dad's fiancée, was waiting at the door with him. She wasn't what I'd expected. Younger than Mom, with bright red hair and paint-stained jeans. She enveloped me in a huge hug, as if we were old friends. "We've got your room all set up," she said, grabbing one of my bags. "I hope you don't mind, but I might have gone a bit overboard with the decorating." The room was perfect. Peaceful blues and grays, with a window seat overlooking the backyard. No baby crying, no Damien's critical comments, no walking on eggshells. Just peace. Mom called that night after she'd found my note. "You could have said goodbye properly," she said, her voice sounding wounded. "Leo was looking for you all day. He'll forget I was ever there soon enough." I spent those first few weeks settling into my new life, getting to know Sarah better. She was an art teacher at the local high school and had a knack for making everyone feel comfortable. We'd stay up late sometimes, drinking hot chocolate and talking about everything and nothing. Despite Dad's generous offers to support me, I wanted to be independent. I found a job at the Daily Grind, a busy cafe near the house. It wasn't glamorous work, but I enjoyed it. The regular customers were friendly, my coworkers were fun, and the tips were decent. When fall arrived, I moved into the dorms at Marshall University. My roommate Jenny was a music major from Chicago who practiced violin at odd hours but always brought me coffee when she came back from her early morning rehearsals. I was studying business administration and actually enjoying my classes, working at the cafe between lectures and study sessions. A year passed like this, and I was happy. Truly happy? Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon at the daily grind, everything shattered. I was clearing tables when I heard a familiar laugh, a sound that made my stomach plummet. There at a corner table was Damien. But he wasn't alone, and he definitely wasn't on a business trip. He was with a woman I'd never seen before. A striking woman with fiery red hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a power suit that screamed success. And they were kissing like teenagers on a first date. Panic clawed at my throat. I had to get out of there. "Hey, Lisa," I whispered to my coworker, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Can you take table 12? I need to take my break." I ducked into the back room, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the small window in the door, I could still see them. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and started recording. Damien was holding the woman's hand across the table, looking at her with that adoring gaze he used to reserve for Mom in the early days. When they finally left, Lisa found me still hiding in the back. "What was that about?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Did you know those people?" "The man," I said carefully. "I know him. I just didn't want him to see me working here." "Do you know who the woman was?" Lisa's eyes lit up with gossip. "Oh my God, yes. That's Catherine Morrison. Everyone knows her. She's always in the local news for her charity work and her business success." That night, sleep eluded me. The image of Damien kissing that woman played on repeat in my mind. Around midnight, I grabbed my laptop and opened social media. My fingers trembled as I typed Catherine Morrison into the search bar. Her profile popped up immediately, verified checkmark and all. CEO of Richmond Technologies, the first read aloud to myself in the darkness of my dorm room. That was where Damien worked. Catherine Morrison wasn't just some woman he was seeing. She was his boss, the director of the entire company. He wasn't just having an affair, he was sleeping with his own superior. I scrolled down her timeline, and that's when things went from bad to catastrophic. There was Damien, in photo after photo, at company events, always standing close to Catherine, while other employees maintained a respectful distance. Damien at what looked like exotic vacation spots. Damien holding a little boy, maybe around 3 years old, both of them grinning at the camera. The caption under one particularly painful photo read, "My 2 favorite men in the world. Can't wait to make it official soon. Blessed #family #engagement. Engagement?" I kept scrolling, and the evidence mounted. Photos going back years. All those business trips Damien took. All those nights Mom was home alone with Leo. He'd been building a whole separate life, complete with another child. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped my phone. As if in a trance, I started saving the photos, one by one. I downloaded everything, including screenshots of the captions. There was Damien at what looked like the boy's birthday party, Damien and Catherine at Christmas dinner, Damien pushing the little boy on a swing. One photo in particular made me pause. It was from about 6 months ago, showing Damien, Catherine, and their son at some kind of carnival. The caption read, "Sometimes the perfect family comes when you least expect it." So thankful my Prince Charming was patient enough to wait for the right moment to start our family together. True love #destined #finally. Patient enough to wait? He hadn't been waiting. He'd been lying, living 2 completely different lives, juggling 2 families like some sick circus act. And based on Catherine's posts, she had no idea. She genuinely believed she'd found her fairy tale ending with her handsome subordinate who'd stolen her heart. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. The Damien in these photos was so different from the man I knew. Here, he was smiling. Real smiles, not those sneering smirks he always gave me. He looked happy. Genuinely happy. playing with his secret son, hugging his secret fiancé, living his secret life. "Oh, Mom," I whispered to my empty room. "What has he done to us?" It was almost 3 a.m. I had an early class, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. I needed to make sure I had every bit of evidence saved. Mom would need to see this. The truth had to come out, even if it was going to shatter everything. A week later, I found myself on a train headed home. The evidence was burning a hole in my phone, and my stomach was tied in knots. I hadn't told Dad where I was going. He wouldn't have understood why I needed to do this. Mom looked genuinely surprised when she opened the door. "Chloe? We weren't expecting you." Leo was toddling around her legs, and for a moment it felt almost normal. Then Damien appeared behind them. Well, he said, that familiar mocking tone already creeping into his voice. "Don't tell me you got kicked out of college for failing grades and need to come crawling back home?" Mom laughed, like it was the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "Damien, stop it. I'm sure Chloe's doing fine at school. Aren't you, honey?" I forced a smile. "I'm on the dean's list, actually." "Of course, you are," Damien smirked, looking me up and down. "Say, those jeans keep getting bigger and bigger every time I see you. Is that the new style now? The baggy look?" I bit back a retort. I'd actually lost weight since starting college. All those shifts running around the cafe had toned me up considerably. But Damien never missed a chance to make digs about my appearance. The comments continued all day. Every time I moved, every time I spoke, Damien had something to say. When Mom served dinner, it got even worse. "Whoa, Chloe," he exclaimed as I put some mashed potatoes on my plate. "Save some for the rest of us." I kept eating silently, watching him out of the corner of my eye. This man, who sat here mocking me, was the same one who'd been playing happy families with his boss just last week. The same man who had another child, another life. "Honey?" He turned to Mom with an exaggerated, concerned expression. "If Chloe's going to visit more often, we might need to invest in a second refrigerator." Mom giggled, gazing at him with such adoration it made my chest ache. She really had no idea. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, loaded with proof of his deception. Should I show her? Looking at her face, so full of love for this man who'd been lying to her for years, I hesitated. After dinner, I started toward my old room, intending to steel my nerves, but Damien's voice stopped me on the stairs. "Where do you think you're going?" I turned around, confused. "To my room?" He laughed. "That's my office now. We converted it months ago. Didn't your mother tell you?" Mom appeared in the hallway, bouncing Leo on her hip. "Oh, I forgot to mention it." "She can sleep on the couch," I offered, trying to remain composed. Damien shook his head. "You'll be in the way. Better head back to campus tonight." I looked at Mom, waiting for her to disagree, to stand up for me, to offer some alternative. Instead, she just nodded. "Damien's right, sweetie. It would probably be better if you found somewhere else to stay tonight." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the way Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, or maybe it was Damien's smug expression. But I'd had enough. "Why do you always do this?" I turned to Mom, my voice shaking. "Why do you always take his side? Can't you see how he treats me? How he's always treated me?" Mom shifted Leo to her other hip, looking uncomfortable. "Chloe, you're being dramatic. Damien just likes to joke around. You've always been too sensitive. Joke around?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Is that what you call constant mockery? The comments about my weight, my clothes, my life? He hates me, Mom. He's always hated me. And you've never once stood up for me." Damien stepped forward, that insufferable grin still plastered on his face. Now, Chloe, let's not turn this into one of your teenage tantrums." "Shut up." My hands were trembling as I pulled out my phone. "You don't get to talk anymore." I pulled up the first photo and shoved it in his face. The effect was instantaneous. All the color drained from his cheeks. "What's that?" Mom asked, peering at the screen. "Damien, What's wrong? Would you like to explain to Mom what kind of business trips you've been taking? I swiped to the next photo, the one of him with his other son. Or maybe you'd like to tell her about your fiancé. You know, your boss at Richmond Technologies? The one you have a child with? Mom's mouth fell open. The room was so silent I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. That's not Richard, Mom stammered, his smirk finally fading. Not what? Not your son in these photos? Not you kissing Catherine Morrison? Not your engagement announcement from 2 weeks ago? I turned to Mom. He's been living a double life for years, Mom. All those business trips? He's been with his other family, his other son, planning his wedding to another woman who has no idea he's already married. You're lying. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. I wish I was. He's been cheating on you with his boss. They have a 3-year-old son together. She thinks he's single, that they're going to get married. Stop it. Mom's scream made Leo start crying. Stop these horrible lies. How dare you? How dare you make up such disgusting stories about Richard? Mom, I have proof. Look at the photos. Look at the dates. I don't want to look at anything. You've always hated Richard. You've always tried to come between us. You're just jealous because he's a better father to Leo than your own father ever was to you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, stunned, as she stormed to the front door, yanked it open, and threw my backpack onto the front lawn. Get out. She was crying now, her face red with anger. Get out of our house. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. I walked toward the door, my legs feeling like lead. As I passed Damien, I saw his smile had returned, bigger than ever. He leaned close, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Your mother will always believe me over you, Chloe. Remember that. I spent the entire train ride back to campus in a daze, my mother's words echoing in my head. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I opened my laptop and navigated to Catherine Morrison's social media profile. My cursor hovered over the message button for a long moment before I finally clicked. Miss Morrison, I have some important information about your fiancé that you need to know. Would you be willing to meet in person? Her response came within an hour. Regarding Richard? Of course. Is everything okay? We agreed to meet at the Daily Grind. Her suggestion, ironically. She had no idea I worked there, that I'd first discovered her existence in that very cafe. I arrived early from my shift, changed into my uniform, and waited. At exactly 2:00 p.m., Catherine Morrison walked through the door. Catherine? I approached her table. I'm Chloe. Her smile was genuine, warm even. Please, sit down. You seemed concerned in your message. What's this about Richard? The first took a deep breath. Before I show you something, I want you to know that I'm sorry. I really am. Her smile faltered. Sorry about what? I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. This is my mother, I said, showing her a recent family photo. And this is her husband, Damien. Catherine stared at the photo, her perfectly manicured hand frozen halfway to her coffee cup. I don't understand. He's been married to my mom for years. They have a 2-year-old son together. My little brother. I swiped to another photo. This was taken at Christmas. No, she shook her head. No, that's impossible. Richard isn't married. He told me he's never been married. We're getting married in the spring. We have a son. I know about your son, I said gently. And I know Richard told you he was single. He's been living a double life. Husband and father in one city, fiancé and father in another. She sat in silence for a long moment, her coffee growing cold. All this time, she finally whispered, all those business trips, home to his sick mother. He was going home to his wife, his other child. She let out a bitter laugh. God, I'm such a fool. I promoted him 3 times, made him regional director. I thought he loved me. I'm sorry, I said again, because what else could I say? Don't be, she straightened her spine, the CEO mask sliding back into place. Thank you for telling me the truth. I can see now he was just using me. For my position, my influence. She stood up, gathering her things. If you'll excuse me, I have some calls to make. Thank you, Chloe. Really. I watched her walk out of the cafe, her heels clicking against the floor, her head held high despite everything. She was stronger than my mother, I thought. She could face the truth. A week after my meeting with Catherine, my phone rang. It was Mom, and before I could even say hello, she was screaming. Are you happy now? Her voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Are you finally satisfied? You've ruined everything. Mom, what? They fired him. That woman, his boss, she got him fired. They did an audit of all his work and found violations. They're fining him thousands of dollars. His career is over. She was sobbing now, her words coming between hiccuping breaths. No respectable company will ever hire him again. And it's all your fault. I sat down on my dorm room bed, my legs suddenly weak. Mom, he was cheating on you. He had another family, a child he was going to marry. You don't understand anything. She cut me off, her voice dripping with venom. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. The best father Leo could have. How dare you try to destroy that? That he was using both of you. You and Catherine. He was just manipulating everyone for his own benefit. Can't you see that? Don't you dare talk about him like that. Her voice went ice cold. You have no right to judge the man I love more than anything in this world. Mom, please. I have no daughter. The words came out like bullets. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, tears streaming down my face. Jenny found me like that when she came back from class. Oh my God, Chloe, what happened? I told her everything. She held me while I cried, brought me tea, and helped me call Dad. He and Sarah drove up that night just to check on me. You did the right thing, Sarah kept saying, holding my hand. Sometimes the right thing hurts like hell, but that doesn't make it wrong. A year has passed since then. I'm still at Marshall University, keeping my grades up and working at the cafe. Dad and Sarah got married in a small ceremony by the lake. It was beautiful, and I was their maid of honor. Sarah's pregnant now. I'm going to have a little sister soon. I hear things about Mom and Damien through mutual friends back home. He never found another corporate job. Word got around about the audit findings. He started drinking heavily, picking fights in bars. Mom had to get a job at the local supermarket to support them. Leo is in daycare now because they can't afford a nanny like they used to. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I wonder if I should feel guilty. Maybe if I'd kept quiet, everyone would be better off. Mom would still be happy in her ignorance. Damien would still have his job. Leo would have a more stable home. But then I remembered Damien's smirk when Mom threw me out, his whispered words. Your mother will always believe me over you. I remember all the years of his subtle cruelty, his manipulation, the way he twisted everything to make me feel small. The stolen moment when he thought he was finally on top, and the pure malice that was behind his eyes when he spoke. No, I don't feel sorry for them. The truth is like that sometimes. It doesn't care about convenience or comfort. It just is. Damien built his life on lies, and when those lies finally crumbled, he had no one to blame but himself, and I, for once, was not going to be a victim to his facade. I will always be Evelyn's daughter, whether she likes it or not, and his charade stops here. I tried to follow all your guidelines, maintaining pace while emphasizing key emotional moments and avoiding overly polished language. I think this version effectively conveys Chloe's emotional journey and the impact of Damien's deception on her life and family. I hope this meets your expectations. The quiet hum of the dorm room lulled most nights into a deep sleep, but some nights, the silence was a deafening reminder of the void my mother had created. Being disowned wasn't a clean break. It was an amputation, leaving phantom pains that throbbed with guilt, anger, and a desperate, unacknowledged longing. One of those nights, a Tuesday, just like the day Damien's double life revealed itself, I found myself staring at the ceiling, the faint glow of the city lights painting shadows across the plaster. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, snapshots from a time when our family, however flawed, felt like a safe haven. A picture of Mom and me laughing at a silly joke pre-Damien, the edges of my vision blurred with tears. Was she ever going to forgive me? Or was I forever banished, a pariah who dared to shatter her carefully constructed illusion? Jenny stirred in her sleep, muttering something about a concerto. I envied her ability to find solace in music, to drown out the noise of the world with melody. I, on the other hand, was trapped in a cacophony of memories, regrets, and unanswered questions. I decided to do something drastic, something that terrified me. I found the number for Catherine Morrison's office. It was late, but maybe, just maybe, she'd still be there. On a whim, I punched the numbers in. The phone rang 3 times before a weary voice answered. Morrison. Miss Morrison? This is Chloe. You know, from the Daily Grind? I spoke to you last year about... My voice trailed off, the weight of the past pressing down on me. There was a pause, a heavy silence. Chloe. Yes, I remember. What can I do for you? Her voice held a cautious neutrality. I was just wondering how you were doing. After everything, the words felt clumsy, inadequate. Another long pause. I'm managing? It hasn't been easy, but I'm surviving. There was a faint tremor in her voice, a hint of vulnerability that surprised me. I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get so messy. You did what you thought was right. I can't fault you for that. He's no longer a concern of mine, but I do have to ask, are you all right? I remember you mentioning your mother. The dam broke. She disowned me. She refuses to speak to me. She blames me for everything. The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. Catherine sighed, a sound that resonated with shared pain. I can't pretend to understand what you're going through, Chloe. But I can say this. Sometimes the people we love are incapable of seeing the truth, even when it's staring them in the face. It's not a reflection of you, but a reflection of their own limitations. She invited me to lunch the following week. I almost said no, overwhelmed by a sudden wave of shyness. But something in her voice, a shared understanding of loss and betrayal, compelled me to accept. Our lunch was at a quiet bistro, far removed from the bustling atmosphere of the daily grind. Catherine looked different, softer, without the power suit and the corporate armor. There were faint shadows under her eyes, but her gaze was steady, resolute. We talked for hours. About Damien, about the lies he'd spun, about the devastating impact his actions had on our lives. We talked about our mothers and fathers and siblings, and the love that binds, the love that destroys, and the love that rebuilds. She had been in therapy and support groups, she told me, and it had helped more than she could have ever imagined. She told me I should look into it, that if anything, I was internalizing too much and needed someone to talk to, someone removed from the situation. Catherine didn't offer me a magic solution or easy forgiveness from my mother, but she offered something just as valuable: validation. The knowledge that I wasn't alone in my pain, that someone else understood the complexities of betrayal and the enduring power of resilience. And then, she offered me a summer internship at Richmond Technologies. I know it might seem strange, she said, her eyes searching mine, but I see something in you, Chloe. A strength, a determination. And frankly, my company could use someone with your kind of integrity. It was a chance to start over, to prove myself, to forge a new path untainted by the shadows of the past. I accepted, my heart filled with a fragile hope. The internship was intense, challenging, and surprisingly rewarding. I learned about marketing, finance, and the inner workings of a successful corporation. I worked long hours, pushing myself to excel, driven by a desire to prove Catherine's faith in me. I even met some of her colleagues who'd worked closely with Damien. They were shocked. disgusted and filled with remorse for not seeing through his charade sooner. It helped quell my own insecurities. As the summer drew to a close, Catherine offered me a full-time position after graduation. It was a dream come true, an opportunity to build a future I never thought possible. "You've earned this, Chloe," she said, her voice filled with genuine pride. "You've overcome so much, and you've emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Don't ever doubt your worth." With a job lined up, the fear of my future began to fade, but still, I wasn't whole. It didn't matter if I was becoming the version of myself I'd always dreamed of. I wasn't a complete being if I didn't try one more time. Before graduation, I wrote a letter to my mother. I poured out my heart, acknowledging my mistakes, expressing my regrets, and reiterating my unwavering love for her. I didn't defend myself or justify my actions. I simply asked for forgiveness, for understanding, for a glimmer of hope that one day we could rebuild our shattered relationship. I didn't expect a response. Months turned into years, and the silence remained unbroken. I tried to move on, to focus on my career, my friendships, my new life. But the ghost of my mother haunted me, a constant reminder of the family I'd lost. 3 years after graduation, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, unassuming box, addressed in a familiar handwriting. My heart leaped into my throat as I tore it open. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was a photo album. I carefully opened it, my hands trembling. The first page contained a recent picture of Mom, standing next to Leo, who was now a lanky teenager. They were both smiling, but there was a weariness in their eyes. As I turned the pages, I saw snapshots from my childhood. Birthday parties, family vacations, holidays spent together. There were pictures of Dad, of me, of Mom, of all of us, frozen in moments of fleeting happiness. On the last page, there was a single handwritten note. "Chloe, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you for what happened. The pain you caused me was immense, and it changed everything. But I'm starting to understand that you were trying to protect me in your own way, that you thought you were doing the right thing. Richard is gone, but the damage he left is still there. It isn't easy. Leo misses you. He asks about you sometimes. Maybe one day you can come home. Maybe one day we can try to be a family again." "Mom." Tears streamed down my face as I clutched the photo album to my chest. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start, a flicker of hope in the darkness, a sign that maybe, just maybe, the broken pieces of my life could be pieced back together, creating something new, something stronger, something more resilient than before. It took another year before I finally worked up the courage to visit. Dad and Sarah were supportive, encouraging me to take the leap, but also reminding me to protect my heart. When I arrived at the old house, it looked smaller, more worn than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of the past. Mom opened the door, her face etched with a mixture of apprehension and longing. We stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other before she finally stepped aside and invited me in. Leo was taller than me now, his voice deeper, his demeanor more reserved. He offered me a shy smile, a hesitant welcome. The visit was awkward, stilted, filled with uncomfortable silences. We tiptoed around the past, avoiding any mention of Damien, of the affair, of the devastating fallout. But slowly, as the day wore on, the tension began to ease. We talked about Leo's school, about Mom's job, about the mundane details of their lives. We laughed at old memories, shared stories, and found small moments of connection. As I prepared to leave, Mom pulled me into a hug. It was a tentative embrace, but it was real. "Thank you for coming, Chloe," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means a lot to me." "It means a lot to me too, Mom," I replied, my voice choked with tears. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a beginning. A chance to rebuild our relationship, to heal the wounds of the past, and to move forward, together, into an uncertain future. Years passed. Mom and I worked on our relationship, slowly, painstakingly, rebuilding trust and understanding. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But we persisted, driven by a shared desire to heal and to create a different kind of family, one based on honesty, acceptance, and unconditional love. I stayed at Richmond Technologies, excelling in my career and forging a close bond with Catherine. She became a mentor, a confidant, and a dear friend. Leo graduated high school and enrolled in a community college, pursuing his passion for photography. He came to visit me often, seeking advice, sharing his dreams, and becoming the little brother I'd always wanted. Dad and Sarah welcomed their second child, a little boy named Ethan, completing our blended family. Christmases were chaotic, joyful, filled with laughter, love, and a sense of belonging. One sunny afternoon, I received a call from Mom. Her voice was filled with a quiet joy. "Chloe, I wanted you to know I'm getting remarried." My heart skipped a beat. "That's wonderful, Mom. Who is he?" "His name is David. He's a kind, gentle man, and he loves Leo and me very much." I smiled, imagining Mom finding happiness again, a second chance at love. "I'd love for you to be there, Chloe," she said, her voice hesitant. Would you be my maid of honor?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom." Standing beside her on her wedding day, watching her exchange vows with David, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The scars of the past would always be there, a reminder of the pain and loss we had endured, but they no longer defined us. We had survived, we had healed, and we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The echo of lies had finally faded, replaced by a symphony of love, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family. A family, I realized, that wasn't defined by blood or shared history, but by the unbreakable bonds of the heart. I've tried to create a satisfying conclusion that ties up loose ends, offers a sense of closure, and highlights Chloe's growth and resilience. I hope this fulfills your request.